Electrocast.
Hold on to your butt.
Come on, sucker. Let's get it on.
Oh, you want to fight? You want to fight?
I do not entertain hypotheticals. The world as it is vexing enough.
You don't know anybody named Iris? I don't know nobody named Iris.
Can I have a piece of toast?
I don't give a damn what you think you are entitled to.
We are changing the course of history as we see it. That is what Western demands.
How could you do this to me? Really, I want to know.
Why did you do that?
What you feel only matters to you.
Step back for 1 minute and look at the big picture.
And that's all? No, not for the real fire.
We offer you a bond, a family that very few can understand.
Help me.
Help you.
And don't do drugs.
Or whatever movies with Wesley and Iris.
What up? And welcome to TTP, Titan Truth Podcast, number 225. My name is Iris, and I'm here with my older brother,
Wesley. And today we're discussing Kyle Chandler's Godzilla vs. Kong.
So wasted in that role.
You love that dude.
Kyle Chandler, I love me some Kyle Chandler, but they could have had a sock with eyebrows to play his part.
He was the crying dad. Imagine being separated from your young daughter who's headstrong and has grown since Godzilla, King of the Monsters.
This wasn't Journey of Natty Gann. They weren't like searching for each other the entire movie.
That is all the humans in Godzilla movies do, is they run around and scream and they're separated. This one, they were less covered in dust and like rubble when they came together and hugged, but that's typically what they do.
Despite the entire city of Hong Kong being destroyed.
Yeah. You know, we obviously have a long history with King Kong and Godzilla, but inevitably we're going to bring up Pacific Rim, which traded on the idea of these giant super monsters battling, particularly in the water. And they were all fast and furious and covered in neon and LEDs and stuff. Pacific Rim stepped it up, man. We got to add bling and we have to make them like sparkly. We have to make them glowier.
Godzilla had a disproportionate amount of bells and whistles here. Godzilla's got the sparkle, the blue flame vomit.
Yep.
He's got the tail. He's got the claws. He's got the jaws. He's got the scales. He can swim. Like, King Kong ain't got nothing. He's got, like, empathy or sympathy or something.
Right. Now he does, but we didn't know that. So Godzilla vs. Kong has been around for a long time. It dates back to the mid-2000s Peter Jackson's King Kong coming off of Lord of the Rings. And then Godzilla, I think, was 2014. And since then, we've had Godzilla King of the Monsters, which established some of the characters that appear in this movie, as well as Kong Skull Island, except for the fact that that movie took place in the Vietnam era or somewhere around that time. But these two were never in the same league. And they made it happen in the same way that they're like, you know who Freddy should fight is Jason. The aliens and the predators, they're both aliens. Let's make them fight each other. Because this is what comic book nerds do. This has been online for a year or better. They're like, the giant nuclear radiation fire blasting tail swiping lizard is going to go up against the monkey. And so they've had the scale of Godzilla and King Kong throughout history, and Kong is dwarfed. And they changed that by saying, well, you know, he's still growing, and conveniently he comes up to size. And yet I thought, well, look, if they're going to stand toe-to-toe and really fight it out, who's probably going to win? I'm going with the one with the prehensile thumbs. Godzilla has the little T-Rex arms, which he apparently uses to great effect when he scratches Kong all up and makes him mad.
He also has kind of a little head.
Godzilla, yeah, when he's next to Kong, who is all head, it's very small. But right. Godzilla has long been, this iteration of Godzilla has been criticized because originally a Japanese creation, obviously, and it was a dude in a suit. It conforms to the style of a human being. And then when this one showed up, the Japanese were laughing. They were like, he's so fat. Why is he so fat? Well, because this is the American version of Godzilla, and he's very pear-shaped, and that little stem of a head seems like he couldn't get his jaws around anything Kong related.
I should have known that you were going to nerd out about this.
I wish that I could happily nerd out about Godzilla versus Kong. Kelly was strangely resistant to it. She's like, I can go in the room when you want to watch that. And I'm like, just all you have to do is keep your eyes on it. Just make your eyes look at it. That's all you have to do. And I was, in a strange way, vaguely excited. We are the children of Dad, and Dad loves King Kong. The original 1930s version, the Peter Jackson version, the Jeff Bridges one, everything in between. He and Mom have been watching these movies in preparation for Godzilla vs. Kong. Dad is all about Godzilla because Dad is Japanese. As a result, I was all about Godzilla as a very young kid, and I saw Godzilla when it first came out in 2014. And so in a weird way, I was really hoping that this would be awesome. You know what's not awesome? Anytime any grown adult says Godzilla, "Sir, Godzilla is on the move." "Sir, we're tracking Godzilla. Godzilla off the port bow." It sounds so dumb. Even the King Kong sounds kind of dumb. It's like Donkey Kong, but you can just say Kong and it's slightly better.
It's slightly cooler. They had lots of alternates so that they didn't have to sound dorky all the time. Like, it's not as dorky to be like the Titans, blah, blah, blah.
And what never helps is, you would think that if it were a Japanese accent, they could revert to Gojira or whatever. But when you have Demian Bashir and then you have the Japanese guy in the suit, it was like Ken Watanabe in Inception. It was a lot of exposition, and I couldn't understand a word of it.
Exposition and accents, big no-no.
I think the sound was pretty cool in this movie. There was a lot of rumbling, grumbling, a lot of spaceship sounds, I guess. They looked like spaceships. A lot of sound effects, sound design was great, but the mix for the actual action and the dialogue was miserable.
I actually found the mix to be a lot more watching a movie at night with kids sleeping friendly. I didn't have to ride the volume quite as much as with most action movies.
Because we had the initial battle, I thought we were in a good place. And then they started talking, and I was like, what? And I didn't know if it was the accent, and I literally doubled the volume just to hear what they were saying.
I mean, closed captions. Hello.
Subtitles get in the way of the rubble and the fighting. Also, I felt like that would have been vaguely racist.
What, captioning it?
Yeah, I can't understand these international people. Maybe I better turn on the subtitles to make them intelligible. I felt like that would have been wrong.
Right, from all the race police in your living room.
Yep.
I thought that the mix was actually pretty bearable. The sound design there were some missed opportunities with the sound design. Godzilla and Kong kind of sound the same when they roared. And then, despite being humongous, when Godzilla steals away at the end, there's not a sound when he hits the water. Like, he comes in and he capsizes ships and, like, sends a great tidal wave across wherever it was, right. Florida. And then, like, when he steals away, it's like he goes bloop, and then he's drifting off into the sunset.
But we never saw it. I got the sense that they were implying that, this showdown isn't over, but they regard each other with some modicum of respect and turn away, and Kong drops his super axe, and the next thing you know, Godzilla's in the water, and he's gone. It was like, we didn't see that moment where he goes to the edge of the pier, or the edge of the city, I guess, and turns around and gives him a little nod and then jumps, and a little tear forms in Kong's eye.
So Kong is clearly our sympathetic character in Godzilla vs. Kong, but that was Godzilla's moment when he's like, all right, so we have an agreement. And so he had his little moment to be a sympathetic character, but Kong is definitely our dude, right?
Yes, and it was set up that way very deliberately. I was like, I guess we know who we're aligning ourselves with, because you can't have Kong start talking to people and then die unceremoniously.
Yeah, or the cutesy scratching of the butt and the yawning and waking up, like, you're supposed to love him.
I mean, it was also established when our first appearance of Godzilla, he came ashore just and started rampaging and, like, killed 200 people and then bounced, right?
So Kong's our dude.
He's having his coffee. And he's doing his morning stretch, right? And I thought, obviously, either he's going to win or he's going to die, and we're going to hate Godzilla all the more.
But they never die.
No, they never die. And that's the problem with this movie. Generally, when movies have a long history, and we're talking 70, 80 years of various incarnations, way more than that in King Kong's case, of history with these movies, it's bad enough when you have one of those precedents. But this was like the Justice League of monster movies. And both of these major characters come with decades upon decades of fandom and knowledge and awareness and cultural proliferation. And imagine trying to satisfy not only the people who are tuning in on HBO or in the theaters, but their grandparents and great-grandparents who remember fondly watching the rubber suits as a kid, or stop-motion King Kong ripping apart the dinosaur. Spoiler. And all those homages were there all over the place. So many that I, who have a relatively trained eye on these things, I wasn't nerding out or anything, but I had seen so many of these movies with Dad. I was like, oh, there's a part from The Thing and the dinosaur with the jaws, which they did in the other King Kong movie. And then he was actually clinging to a building in Hong Kong that was vaguely reminiscent of the Empire State Building with the helicopter in the background.
This must have been like a father-son bonding thing, because I don't remember these being on rotation in our house.
Godzilla movies were like the Jimi Hendrix of monster movies in my childhood. Dad loved them. They seemed to go on forever. They were discordant and loud and crashy and confusing. And they get in a fight and it's like for hours. And so they all blend together in my mind. It's like Dad playing Jimi Hendrix on a loop where I didn't know what was happening because there were no like verses or anything. It was just like guitar solos going on for hours.
I kind of think that Jimi Hendrix cassette tape got stuck in Dad's Supra.
Yep.
And like he just played it continuously.
Yeah. It's all been building to this. This was inevitable. And they established that. We had the long history they showed us up front and the fantasy football bracket of monster battles.
That was pretty cool, actually.
You knew what was coming to this. And for anybody who hadn't seen the preceding movies, we know it was like The Incredibles, like terminated, defeated, battle won. And we saw all the other monsters that died. It kind of came back into play, the Ghidorah three-headed telekinetic communication thing with the remaining skull. But it seemed like every time one of these movies happens where the mythology collides, then they have to explore the entire backstory of, oh, they were interconnected from the start. It's always been this way. You just didn't know because all the shit that connected them was underground in these vast, cavernous, secret, glowing facilities and layers. And they went underground, and I was like, that is not at all surprising.
How did they go underground, Wes?
How did they go underground? And they go down, and they were going to Hong Kong, the one team, and the other team was going to Middle Earth or whatever. And they had these maglev spaceships, which didn't need the maglev apparently, because they were like laser ships or something. How or why did they go underground? They went so that Kong could be king under the mountain on his throne with his glowy axe.
That's a lot of mixed metaphors there. I was kind of more suggesting just how silly it was, how they just all just like wander down there. They're like, oh, we're just running around down here. And then they get to Hong Kong and they're like, we're just in the middle of a Titan test battle with the Mecha Godzilla or whatever.
There's always been a disconnect between the monster goings on where they're leveling cities on a gigantic scale, right? And then the entirely safe humans in the base. They talked to the director about this movie, and the fans were like, it's going to be a 3-hour epic, and this movie comes in under 2.5 hours because the director likes that length of movie. But he was like, if it were longer, if it were the 3-hour monster epic that you want, it's not like it's going to increase the battles. They're not going to punch it out for another hour on screen. It's going to all be humans locked in a lab somewhere talking about monsters, which is boring. So it's always been a disconnect. You can't have humans in the fray. The scale alternates between human level scale and monster total city decimation level scale.
Yes, there's a battle going on a different scale, and humanity just hangs in the balance. It's all humans can really do is wait around and see what's going to happen.
And there's the scrambly Chamber of Secrets exploring ultra nerds that are like all sweaty and have their thermoses full of coffee or whiskey or whatever. And then there's the suit wearing, never get dirty, never get dusty, always holding a glass of scotch, Demi and Bashir characters who are like the masterminds behind Apex. And he doesn't even have to raise his voice. And he has this scotch, and Godzilla's going to do this, and he's going to do that.
Who inevitably has to get eaten, right? Those characters.
Right. And when he did it quietly. He was like, oh shit. And then bam, he was dead. And his daughter died, and he never even knew that she died. When did this trope come into effect? I know that we had the scientists in the lab in the original Godzillas and stuff, but when did this thing happen where you have to have the ultra nerdy, fast-talking comic relief? The new Dennis Nedry type?
Are you talking about Josh, the friend sidekick, or Bernie, the podcaster?
Well, Bernie the podcaster, but
Apex infiltrating guy.
Right, but then you have to have the fat kid with the glasses, who's also the
Josh.
sidekick. It's like they threw in all the sidekicks. And then you have the headstrong young girl who's ultimately smarter than they're like, what are we going to do? However, are we going to find the door? And she's like, you mean this door? And she punches the button and then they're in. They're all the Nevish overthinkers, and she's just the headstrong common sense type.
Yeah. Are you saying when did these characters become archetypes?
I wish I cared more. I wish I cared enough to have been excited.
You said you were. You said you were vaguely excited.
I was before I watched it. It looked like a gritty, more realistic, if that word can even be brought into the same stadium as this movie discussion, when it became anything but. They took it to Middle Earth. They took it to outer space for all intents and purposes. They took it to Pandora. They took it to Titanic. They went everywhere except where I thought this movie was going to be, which is crashing around Tokyo or New York, for that matter.
Or like a jungle environment.
Oh, man. I was like, I'm sure it all connects to something. It seems like the axe bone was connected to the Godzilla bone. I mean, it looks like that axe that he had. And I was like, seriously? The Kongs have reached like the Bronze Age or something? Or the weapon-wielding age? And I guess that was made from the bones of a prehistoric Godzilla-type creature, right?
I don't know if it was bone, but he found it in like the chamber where there were carcasses and stuff.
Man.
I don't know that it was made of bone.
Yeah, it seemed to be implied that that was where Kong originated.
Supposedly where his family would be, but there were no other Kong. Like, is he a monkey or a gorilla?
For all intents and purposes, he was a dwarf. He was like the Gimli of this movie.
Wait, why are you getting all flustered? You have to have expectations to be disappointed. What is there about Godzilla versus Kong that's going to give you some level of expectation that you'll be disappointed?
Well, I had thought this is, choose your fighter, the Mortal Kombat of monster movies, the Street Fighter of monster movies. I wondered what could possibly be in this movie that would sustain it for a minimum of 90 minutes. What do you got? And I'm guessing that that's what the executives were saying at Warner Brothers. They were like, okay, so this seems like inevitable, but what's this movie about other than the fighting? And they're like, think weird. We're going underground. We're going to explore this whole new land. We're unlocking the bonus zone of Middle Earth or whatever. And it's going to be in the water. It's going to be here. It's going to be there. And it would seem like they were going to do the weirdest possible crap to make it entertaining. It didn't just go off the rails. The cart sprouted wings and it started to flap like a dragon bird in the underworld.
Where else do you have to go if you've been doing this for 100 years? Like,
right.
Don't you kind of have to go flying off into outer space?
I guess.
Don't you kind of... I just don't know what you could expect from this other than epic battles and, CG characters that are going to break the suspension of disbelief. But even in that, you're going to look at them and be like, it's kind of cool. Like, they kind of did a good job with these. And if I had any issue, it was with this bizarro cast. And like, why is Alexander Skarsgård so weird? And Millie Bobby Brown and Kyle Chandler? And where's Rebecca Hall been for like 20 years since The Town?
She's been around. They talked to Alexander Skarsgård. They're like, why did you do this one? He's like, because I played like a bunch of bad guys and I wanted something lighter.
Kaylee Hotley as Gia is really cute. But I kind of realized why they didn't have her open her mouth until the end.
And she's the one who finds the answer, the connection.
Maybe she's Emily Blunt's new baby in A Quiet Place 2.
They hit us with, here's how the lore comes together. Here's how the Titans have clashed in the past. A legacy of historic battles and confrontations. And this is why you should care. And I didn't care at all. I didn't care how those HEV underground spacecraft things, how they flew, how they got the tunnel to Hong Kong, or how they got the tunnel to Middle Earth. This ecosystem that lived inside the hollow planet, that was on Earth. They didn't go through some portal that I missed, right?
No, yeah, that was the Hollow Earth.
That New Kong sanctuary is in the middle of our planet?
Yeah. And there's like planet on the inside of our planet rim and then planet in the core. So there's like 2 layers of planet and gravity in Hollow Earth.
I've been watching people laughing about the absurdity of these two facing off and people choosing sides. I'm sure someone has brought it up, because unless there were hundreds of miles of like a skylight, where was the sunlight coming into Middle Earth? The very last shot, they pan and you get the sun rays and the flare, the fake flare on the camera lens.
There's an energy core down there, which is also what they were like tapping into. Yeah, that's where the Titans get their thing. That's where Godzilla gets his charge, from the energy core in the Hollow Earth.
That was the orb that they were looking for. That was the reason Godzilla dragon breathed down to the core to shake up Kong when he was getting too close to the core or whatever.
Yeah, like Godzilla knew that, yeah, and he could feel it, and he was like, and he decided to use his blue vomit to open up a not a wormhole, like a literal, hole to China kind of hole.
Are you listening to what you're saying? This was in a real mega budget movie.
Listen, at least they delivered on their promise of their premise. Like, this movie is all, let's just double things up and it will make it better for people.
I think that's 100% what happened.
That is, let's mash up Godzilla and Kong. Let's get the dueling mega corporations. So they get Apex and Monarch. And then they're like, let's pair everybody up. So you've got like the Millie team and like the Nathan team led by Alexander Skarsgård. And they're not at cross purposes, but they have different agendas. And then it was like a double
with cheese. That's an In-N-Out reference for the non-Californians or Arizonans.
With a whole lot of cheese. My only problem with this movie is if you're going to spend $200 million on a movie, you can put a little effort into the human drama. Like, it's not that hard. Are they intending to make it bad melodrama? What control does the director really have over all those visual and special effects?
Right. You would think that the movie that person was making would be on the human drama, right? And know that
exactly.
That Spielberg knows the dinosaurs are going to come later. Spielberg knew so much that the dinosaurs were going to come later that he shot his little human drama, Jurassic Park, and then bounced off to make Schindler's List and was checking in overseas on how the effects were going, because that was not Spielberg's focus. I'm not saying that Spielberg's human drama of Jurassic Park was a masterwork. I'm saying that when it came to the monster movies, that this one was influenced by, not only taking its cues from the history of both Godzilla and King Kong, but Pacific Rim was a big hit. And Pacific Rim, the monster fights in the water with all the neon, was kind of cool. I was like, that was pretty cool. They punched each other really good. But the human component was awful. I remember railing about this. At the time, we didn't have a podcast, but there was the, you can't do that, scientist. And he had a little, like a little hitch in his giddy up. He had a weird leg thing, but he had the glasses. So he was like stomping around in his lab coat, and he had slicked back oily hair, and he was pushing up his glasses on the bridge of his nose. And he was the quintessential nerdy scientist, outraged kind of thing. And then there was the military general who came in and was going to like start some shit. And then there was the fat comic computer genius nerdy guy. And I was like, this is awful. So I didn't find anything new in this movie when it came to the monsters fighting. And the human interactions didn't get any better. Not better from Pacific Rim. And I dare say not better than the 50s Godzilla movies of the Japanese engineers and hard hats running around in a panic. Nothing. Nothing.
And I don't fault Adam Wingard entirely. Terry Rossio should know better. From Pirates of the Caribbean Fair and all that Disney stuff, like, seasoned enough that like to know that the human drama element is important, and also how much are writers focused on visual. That writers aren't scripting out the visual effects. Like visual effects artists are basically telling that story. So who in this filmmaking process is actually thinking about the actors other than the actors themselves?
Nobody. They were,
It's so
even
weird.
Kyle Chandler was like, it's so different. You can't imagine how epic the scale is in this movie. And I'm like, I disagree. Other than the neon and you running around the city streets, it's all imagined. It's all green screen. It's all CG that you're not going to see for more than a year after you film your part. Nothing. It was entirely a visual spectacle. And I think they were like, look, guys, there are 3 specters in this room, in this digital effects room. We have the Lord of the Rings, we have Pacific Rim, and we have Avatar. And let's incorporate all those elements because that's what people want to see. I'm sure there was some Game of Thrones thrown in with the dragons and stuff and Godzilla and all that junk. But to have all that to draw on, for me to still almost completely check out was really disheartening.
Why even add, like, are humans there simply to add stakes?
The Titans aren't going to construct Mega Godzillas by themselves.
Have Godzilla and King Kong ever come to an agreement like they did at the end of this? That was kind of nice.
Well, in the last one, I haven't seen that one in a million years. There was no clear winner, and we were promised a clear winner in this movie. I don't know that we got it. Last time, King Kong, I believe, won, and he is the one who ends up swimming off into the sea. Spoiler.
The thing that this movie sets up and inverts is there can't be 2 alpha titans, and then in the end it's like, no, we can live in peace. This movie is about peace. I don't know why you hate peace, Wesley, but it's a good thing. It's a good concept for us to embrace, that alpha titans in our world, United States and China, Tom Cruise and Tom Hanks, they can all coexist in this world.
Man, until it wasn't about peace, because they crashed into every building in downtown Hong Kong. No one had peace. The whole city got destroyed on an Armageddon level scale. And despite the fact that Godzilla historically comes ashore and trashes Tokyo, in this case, all the damage was done to Hong Kong. Like, how will this movie perform? And can it perform in China?
Oh, we already have China box office.
And this movie is doing great.
Doing great. $70 million in opening weekend in China alone.
It also, I bet you it's going to find its big audience in Pensacola, too. That's where the chicken and the goose live. What I didn't feel was any realness at all. I was like, not a single frame in this is real. We did, extreme close-ups of Godzilla's eyes and stuff, and it didn't feel like we were on the ground at a human level being terrified by these giant monsters. The scale was all out of whack for me. The Middle Earth and all that stuff was downright silly. The mythology that was supposed to inform it made it doofy and cartoony. King Kong had a glowing axe, and there's a reason none of that showed up in the promo images up to this point. This movie did not work for me at all. I found I was unable to watch a big, elaborate, expensive monster fighting movie. And the child in me must be crying out in rebellion because I wasn't entertained by a movie that sought to do nothing but entertain me. I'm not going to say it was horrible, but it frustrated me, and I was angry trying to decide if this is hell or if this is Middle Earth or whatever. What was it called? Under Earth?
Hollow Earth.
Hollow Earth. It was just hell or Hollow Earth. I'm going to go with just barely over the line. We'll let this movie live in Hollow Earth with Kong doing his things with implausible physics and sunshine. It's a whatever movie. Barely. You're lucky, Adam Wingard.
I give Godzilla vs. Kong a reluctant good because it was like watchable. And I think if you don't go in with very many expectations, it can be an enjoyable experience. I think I'm going to regret this one, but so that's our review on Godzilla vs. Kong, an HBO Max original. Thanks for listening to our episode. Let us know what you think about Godzilla vs. Kong, because naturally, everybody's going to see this movie, right, Wes?
Yes, and they're all going to come at me, bro.
818-835-0473 or whatever movies at gmail.com. Come at him, bro. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
If you're a working professional wondering what's next for your career, you've come to the right place. Whether you're looking for a promotion, growth, or a potential career transition, look no further. With over 30 years working in a variety of industries, I share my insider knowledge with those ready to get ahead on Career Advancement with Craig Ansell. Tune in to get your strategies for success.
Welcome to Ringside with Ray and Prince. My name is Ray Leonard Jr.
Oh, is that the set? No, that's just my dad.
My name is Prince Daniels Jr.
Daniels again with a big home touchdown. On this show, we come to humanize
athletes, entertainers, business executives. We're going to see what makes them tick.
Tuesdays, 10 a.m. Pacific time on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, and wherever you get your podcasts.
We'll see you there. Peace and power.
Electricast. Electricast.